The scream tore through the night, raw and jagged, like glass shattering on concrete. Ezra Caldwell, 24, stood frozen in the dim glow of a street lamp outside his family's weathered Maine farmhouse, his breath catching as the sound faded into the pines. His brother, Lucas, was gone, vanished into the fog that clung to their coastal town of Havenport like a ghost that refused to leave. Ezra's heart pounded as he sprinted toward the barn, where the scream had come from. The air was thick with the scent of salt and pine, and the fog curled around his ankles like it wanted to pull him under. Lucas, 27, the golden son, the one their father boasted about at the docks, had been acting strange for weeks, distant, secretive, slipping out at odd hours. Ezra had chalked it up to stress from running the family's lobster business. But now, with that scream echoing in his skull, he knew it was something worse. The barn door creaked as he shoved it open. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of old hay and rust. "Lucas," Ezra called, his voice cracking. No answer, only the faint drip of water from a leaky roof. His flashlight beam danced across the walls, catching glimpses of rusted tools and stacked lobster traps. In the corner, Lucas's jacket lay crumpled on the floor, a smear of blood staining the sleeve. Ezra's stomach lurched. He stumbled forward, his sneakers scuffing the dirt, and picked it up. The blood was still wet. Ezra had always been the outcast. Growing up in Havenport, a town where everyone knew your name and judged your sins, he'd learned early that being gay was a stain you couldn't scrub out. His father, Tom, a grizzled lobsterman with hands like sandpaper, had called him broken when he came out at 16. His mother, Ellen, had just looked away, her silence sharper than any slap. Lucas was the only one who'd stood by him, even when the town whispered shame behind Ezra's back. But now Lucas was missing, and Ezra was alone with a bloody jacket and a sinking feeling that the town's secrets were about to unravel. He stuffed the jacket into his backpack and ran back to the house, his mind racing. The police wouldn't help, not in Havenport, where Sheriff Danvers turned a blind eye to anything that didn't fit the town's rigid moral code. Ezra needed answers, and he knew where to start. The lighthouse. Lucas had been obsessed with it lately, spending hours sketching its weathered tower in his notebook, muttering about the truth being hidden there. Ezra had never pressed him for details, but now he wished he had. The lighthouse stood on a jagged cliff a mile outside town, its beam cutting through the fog like a warning. Ezra grabbed his bike and pedaled hard, the cold air stinging his face. Havenport was a place that held grudges, and Ezra had felt its weight his whole life. The whispers at church, the way kids at school avoided him, the way his father's friends smirked when he walked by. It all piled up, heavy as the fog. But Lucas had been his anchor, the one who'd sneak him beers and tell him the world was bigger than Havenport. If Lucas was in trouble, Ezra would burn the town down to find him. At the lighthouse, the door was ajar, swaying in the wind. Ezra hesitated, his pulse hammering. Inside, the air was damp, the spiral staircase slick with moss. He climbed, his footsteps echoing, until he reached the lantern room. There, on the floor, was a notebook, Lucas's. Pages were torn out, but one remained, scrawled in his brother's messy handwriting. "They know. The lighthouse. Midnight." Below it, a name, Jasper Klein. Ezra's breath hitched. Jasper, 26, was the new guy in town, a drifter who'd shown up 6 months ago and started working at the docks. He was quiet, with sharp green eyes and a scar across his jaw that nobody dared ask about. Ezra had noticed him too much if he was honest. The way Jasper's hands moved when he hauled traps, the way he'd catch Ezra's gaze and hold it a second too long. But Jasper was trouble, or so the town said. And now his name was in Lucas's notebook, tied to whatever had made his brother scream. Ezra pocketed the notebook and descended, his mind a storm of questions. Why Jasper? What did Lucas know? And why was there blood on that jacket? He needed to find Jasper, but Havenport was small, and eyes were everywhere. If he wasn't careful, the town would bury him before he found the truth. The next morning, Ezra skipped breakfast, ignoring his mother's worried glances and his father's usual silence. He headed to the docks, where the lobster boats bobbed in the gray harbor. Jasper was there, coiling rope, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. Ezra's heart did a traitor's flip, but he pushed it down. This wasn't about feelings, this was about Lucas. "Hey," Ezra said, his voice sharper than he meant. Jasper looked up, those green eyes locking onto him. "We need to talk. Now." Jasper raised an eyebrow but nodded, leading Ezra to a quiet corner of the dock. The wind carried the tang of salt and diesel. "What's this about?" Jasper asked, his voice low like he already knew. "Lucas," Ezra said, pulling out the notebook. "His jacket had blood on it. I found this in the lighthouse. Your name's in it." Jasper's face didn't change, but his hands stilled. "You think I did something to him?" "I don't know what to think," Ezra snapped. "But he's gone, and you're the only lead I've got." Jasper glanced around, then leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Lucas was digging into something he shouldn't have. Something about the town. He said he trusted you, but I told him to keep you out of it. It's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Ezra pressed his chest tight. Jasper hesitated, then said, "Meet me at the old pier tonight, midnight. I'll tell you what I know. But Ezra, don't tell anyone. Not yet." Ezra wanted to argue, to demand answers now, but something in Jasper's eyes stopped him. Fear, maybe, or something deeper. He nodded, and Jasper went back to his work, leaving Ezra with a knot in his stomach and a name burning in his mind. That night, Ezra couldn't sleep. He lay in his childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the town pressing down on him. Havenport wasn't just a place. It was a cage, built on secrets and lies. Lucas had tried to break free, and now he was gone. Ezra clutched the notebook, his fingers tracing his brother's handwriting. Whatever Lucas had found, it was tied to Jasper, the lighthouse, and something the town didn't want anyone to know. At 11:30, Ezra slipped out, biking through the fog to the old pier. The boards creaked under his feet as he waited, the ocean's roar drowning out his thoughts. When Jasper appeared, his silhouette sharp against the moonlight, Ezra's breath caught. Not just from fear, but from something else. Something he'd buried years ago, when Havenport taught him love was a sin. "You came," Jasper said, stepping closer. His voice was soft, but his eyes were intense, searching Ezra's face. "Tell me about Lucas," Ezra said, keeping his distance. "What was he into?" Jasper sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He found something. Records hidden in the lighthouse. Old shipping logs from the 80s. They point to a smuggling ring, drugs, maybe worse, run by people in this town. People with power. Lucas thought he could expose them." Ezra's mind reeled. "And the blood?" "I don't know," Jasper admitted. But he was scared, Ezra. He said if anything happened to him, you'd be the only one he trusted to finish it. Ezra's throat tightened. Lucas had always protected him, even when it cost him their father's approval. Now it was Ezra's turn. "Who's they?" he asked. Jasper glanced out at the dark water. I don't have names yet, but Lucas said the sheriff's involved. And your dad's boat? It's mentioned in the logs. Ezra froze. His father, Tom Caldwell, the man who'd barely spoken to him in years. Part of something criminal? It didn't add up. Or maybe it did, and Ezra had just been too blind to see it. We need those logs, Ezra said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his head. If they're in the lighthouse, we go back. Together. Jasper nodded, but his hand brushed Ezra's, lingering just a moment too long. You sure you want to do this? Once you know, you can't unknow it. Ezra met his gaze, his heart pounding for reasons he didn't want to name. I'm sure. They agreed to meet at the lighthouse the next night. As Ezra biked home, the fog seemed thicker, the town smaller, the secrets heavier. He didn't know what he'd find, but he knew one thing. For Lucas, he'd face anything, even the truth about his family, his town, and maybe himself. The lighthouse loomed like a sentinel in the fog, its beams slicing through the darkness as Ezra and Jasper approached. The wind howled, carrying the salt of the ocean and the weight of their unspoken fears. Ezra's grip on his flashlight tightened, his mind replaying Jasper's words from the pier. Once you know, you can't unknow it. They slipped inside, the door groaning like a warning. The air was colder than the night before, the damp walls seeming to pulse with secrets. Jasper led the way up the spiral staircase, his steps quiet but deliberate. Ezra followed, his heart a drumbeat in his chest. Every creak of the stairs felt like the town itself was watching, waiting for them to cross a line they couldn't come back from. In the lantern room, Jasper knelt by a loose floorboard, prying it up with a pocket knife. Beneath it was a metal box, rusted but intact. Ezra's breath caught as Jasper opened it, revealing a stack of yellowed papers, shipping logs, just as Lucas had described. Ezra scanned the pages, his eyes catching names, dates, and cargo details that made his stomach twist. Heroin, cocaine, unmarked crates, and there, in stark black ink, was his father's boat, the Sea Wren. This can't be right, Ezra whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind rattling the windows. My dad's a lot of things, but a smuggler? Jasper's hand rested on his shoulder, steady and warm. Lucas didn't want to believe it either, but he followed the trail. These logs go back decades. Your dad's boat was used to move product from offshore ships to the mainland. Sheriff Danvers signed off on the harbor inspections. It's all connected. Ezra's world tilted. His father, the man who'd taught him to tie knots and bait traps, the man who'd called him a disgrace for loving men, was tangled in something darker than Ezra could have imagined. He wanted to scream, to tear the logs apart, but Jasper's hand kept him grounded. We need to keep this safe, Jasper said, tucking the logs into his backpack. If they know we have it, we're next. Who's they? Ezra asked again, his voice sharper now. You keep saying that, but who are we up against? Jasper hesitated, his green eyes flickering with something like guilt. I don't know all the names. Lucas only told me pieces. But it's not just your dad or the sheriff. There's someone else, someone pulling the strings. Lucas called them the Keeper. The Keeper. Ezra's skin prickled. It sounded like something out of a ghost story, but Havenport was full of shadows that felt just as real. What does that even mean? I don't know, Jasper admitted, but Lucas was terrified of them. He said the Keeper runs everything, drugs, money, even the town council. He thought they were watching him. Ezra's mind flashed to Lucas's jacket, the blood smeared on the sleeve. You think they took him? Jasper didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. They descended the lighthouse, the logs heavy in Jasper's bag, and stepped into the fog. The night felt alive, the shadows too deep, the air too still. Ezra's bike was where he'd left it, but the tires were slashed, the rubber hanging in jagged strips. "Someone's here," Jasper whispered, grabbing Ezra's arm. Before they could move, headlights flared, blinding them. A truck roared up the cliff path, its engine snarling. Ezra's heart leapt into his throat as he recognized the vehicle. Sheriff Danvers's. "Run!" Jasper hissed, pulling Ezra toward the woods. They sprinted, branches clawing at their faces, the truck's headlights sweeping behind them. Ezra's lungs burned, but fear kept him moving. They ducked behind a cluster of pines, crouching low as the truck slowed, its engine idling like a predator catching its breath. Danvers stepped out, his flashlight beam cutting through the fog. "Ezra Caldwell," he barked, his voice carrying over the wind. "I know you're out there. Come out, boy, or this gets worse." Ezra's blood ran cold. Danvers had never liked him, always eyeing him like he was a stain on Havenport's reputation. But this wasn't about Ezra's sexuality, this was about the logs, about Lucas, about whatever Danvers was hiding. Jasper pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. They waited, barely breathing, until Danvers cursed and climbed back into his truck, the headlights retreating. Ezra's legs shook as he stood, his mind spinning. "He knows we were in the lighthouse," he said. "How?" "Someone's watching," Jasper said, his voice grim. "We need to hide these logs and figure out who the keeper is before they find us." They trekked through the woods, avoiding the main roads, until they reached Jasper's rented cabin on the edge of town. It was small, cluttered with books and fishing gear, but it felt safer than Ezra's house, where his father's shadow loomed. Inside, they spread the logs on the table, piecing together the puzzle. Names jumped out, local business owners, council members, even the pastor. Havenport wasn't just a town. It was a web, and Lucas had tugged the wrong thread. As they worked, Ezra's eyes kept drifting to Jasper. The way he chewed his lip when he concentrated, the way his scar caught the lamplight. Ezra hated how his heart betrayed him, how it wanted something he'd sworn to bury. But Jasper caught his gaze, and for a moment, the room felt too small, the air too warm. "You okay?" Jasper asked, his voice soft. Ezra swallowed. "No, my brother's gone, my dad's a criminal, and I'm stuck in this town that hates me. You tell me how I'm supposed to be okay." Jasper reached out, his hand hovering before settling on Ezra's. "You're not alone in this. Lucas believed in you. So do I." Ezra pulled away, his cheeks burning. "Don't. You don't know me." "I know enough," Jasper said, his voice steady. "I know you're the only one in this town brave enough to do this." Ezra wanted to argue, to push Jasper away, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he turned back to the logs, his fingers trembling as he traced the entries. One name kept appearing, M. Hargrove. Margaret Hargrove, the town's reclusive historian, who lived in a mansion overlooking the harbor. Lucas had mentioned her once, saying she knew every secret Havenport ever buried. "We need to talk to her," Ezra said. "If anyone knows who the keeper is, it's Margaret." Jasper nodded, but his eyes were wary. "She's not just a historian, Ezra. She's connected to this deeply. If we go to her, we're walking into the lion's den." "Then we go prepared," Ezra said, his voice hardening. "For Lucas." They spent the rest of the night planning, unaware of the figure watching from the woods, their silhouettes swallowed by the fog. The Hargrove mansion sat like a relic on the hill, its Victorian spires piercing the morning mist. Ezra and Jasper approached on foot, the logs hidden in a duffel bag slung over Jasper's shoulder. Ezra's nerves were electric, every rustle of leaves making him flinch. Havenport had never felt so alive with menace, as if the town itself was conspiring against them. Margaret Hargrove, 62, was a legend in Havenport. Part historian, part recluse, her name whispered with equal parts reverence and fear. She'd written books on the town's history, but her real power came from what she didn't publish. Lucas had called her the memory of Havenport, and now Ezra wondered if that memory held the key to his brother's disappearance. They knocked, the sound echoing through the heavy oak door. When it opened, Margaret stood there, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Ezra Caldwell," she said, her voice smooth but laced with something unreadable. "And Jasper Klein, to what do I owe this visit?" Ezra's mouth went dry, but he forced the words out. "We need to talk about Lucas and the lighthouse." Margaret's expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked to the duffel bag. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The mansion's interior was a maze of antiques and shadows, the air thick with the scent of old books and wax. She led them to a parlor, where a fire crackled despite the mild September day. "Sit," Margaret said, gesturing to a pair of velvet chairs. "You've been busy, haven't you? Digging where you shouldn't." Ezra's heart sank. She knew. "Where's my brother?" he demanded, leaning forward. "What's the keeper?" Margaret's lips curved, not quite a smile. "Your brother was reckless. He thought he could expose things that are better left buried. Havenport has survived because of its secrets, Ezra. You'd do well to remember that." Jasper set the duffel bag on the floor, his voice steady. "We have the logs. Shipping records from the 80s. They name names, your name too. What were you moving through my dad's boat?" Margaret's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. "You're bold, Jasper, but you're out of your depth. Those logs are a fraction of the truth. The keeper isn't a person. It's a system, a way to keep Havenport alive when the fishing industry collapsed. Drugs, yes, but also money, influence, protection. Your brother threatened that balance." Ezra's hands clenched. "So you took him? Hurt him?" Margaret sighed, her gaze softening. "I didn't touch Lucas, but I warned him. He wouldn't listen. The keeper doesn't tolerate loose ends." "Then who does?" Ezra snapped, standing. "Sheriff Danvers? My dad? Tell me." Margaret rose, her presence commanding despite her age. "You want answers? Look closer to home. Your father's boat wasn't just a tool. It was his lifeline. Ask him why he needed the money. Ask him what he was willing to do to keep it." Ezra's chest tightened. His father. Always his father. The man who'd turned his back on him, who'd chosen pride over family. "You're lying," he said, but his voice wavered. "Am I?" Margaret said, stepping closer. "Go home, Ezra. Ask Tom. But be careful. Some truths cut deeper than others." They left the mansion, the duffel bag heavier than ever. Ezra's mind was a storm, Margaret's words looping like a siren's call. Jasper walked beside him, silent but close, his presence a quiet anchor. As they reached the main road, Jasper grabbed Ezra's arm, pulling him behind a tree. A black SUV idled nearby, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. "They're following us," Jasper whispered. "We need to split up. Hide the logs somewhere safe." Ezra nodded, his pulse racing. "My old treehouse behind the farm. No one goes there." They parted ways, Jasper heading toward the docks, Ezra toward home. The farmhouse was quiet when he arrived, his mother at church, his father out on the boat. Ezra climbed the oak tree in the backyard, its branches creaking under his weight. The treehouse was a relic of his childhood, a place he and Lucas had built together. He hid the logs under a loose board, his hands shaking as he worked. When he climbed down, his father was waiting, his face like stone. "Where you been, boy?" Tom growled, his eyes narrowing. "Sheriff says you've been sneaking around the lighthouse." Ezra's stomach dropped. "I'm looking for Lucas. You know anything about that?" Tom's jaw tightened, his fists clenching. "You stay out of it. Lucas made his choices. Don't make the same mistake." Ezra stepped closer, anger overriding fear. "What choices, Dad? Smuggling? Working for the keeper? What did you do to him?" Tom's hand shot out, grabbing Ezra's collar. "You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed. "This town's all we got. You think you can tear it down? You're nothing but trouble, always have been." Ezra shoved him off, his chest heaving. "I'm finding Lucas, and I'm finding the truth." He turned and ran, his father's shouts fading behind him. The town felt like it was closing in, every shadow a threat. He needed Jasper, needed the logs, needed answers. But as he reached the docks, he saw smoke rising from the direction of Jasper's cabin. His heart stopped. He sprinted, the smell of burning wood growing stronger, and when he arrived, the cabin was engulfed in flames. "Jasper!" Ezra shouted, his voice raw. No answer. The fire roared, eating through the walls, and Ezra's world crumbled. Was Jasper inside? Had the keeper found them? He sank to his knees, the heat searing his face, and for the first time in years he prayed. Not to God, but to Lucas to keep Jasper safe, to give him a chance to make things right. The flames devoured Jasper's cabin, spitting embers into the night sky. Ezra stood frozen, his heart hammering as he scanned the crowd of onlookers. Dockworkers, neighbors, none of them Jasper. The fire truck's siren wailed in the distance, too late to save anything. Ezra's mind raced. The logs were safe in the treehouse, but Jasper, where was Jasper? He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the murmurs, the stares that had followed him his whole life. A hand grabbed his arm, and he spun, ready to fight. But it was Jasper, his face smudged with soot, his eyes wild. "I'm okay," he said, pulling Ezra away from the crowd. "Someone torched it. They knew we had the logs." Ezra's relief was short-lived, replaced by a surge of anger. "Who? Danvers? My dad." Jasper shook his head, leading Ezra down a narrow alley away from the fire. "I don't know, but they're closing in. We need to move fast." They ducked into an abandoned boathouse, the air thick with the smell of mildew and salt. Jasper leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "I went back to the lighthouse after we split up. Found something Lucas left, a key, taped under the lantern. It's got an address scratched on it, 47 Harbor Lane." Ezra's eyes widened. "That's the old warehouse district. Nobody goes there anymore." "Exactly," Jasper said. "Lucas must have hidden something there, something the keeper wants." They waited until the fire trucks left, then slipped through the shadows to the warehouse district. Havenport's edges were crumbling, the warehouses relics of a time when the town thrived. 47 Harbor Lane was a squat, rusted building, its windows boarded up. The key fit a side door, and they stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them. Ezra's flashlight revealed crates stacked high, some marked with faded shipping labels, others pried open, empty. In the corner was a metal cabinet, its lock matching the key. Inside, they found a recorder, small, old, the kind truckers used for logs. Ezra's hands shook as he pressed play. Lucas's voice crackled through the static, urgent and low. "If you're hearing this, I'm probably gone. Ezra, I'm sorry. I didn't want you in this, but you're the only one I trust. The keeper's real, Margaret knows who it is. The drugs, the money, it's all tied to the church. Pastor Reynolds, Danvers' dad, they're all in it. There's proof in the church basement, but be careful. They'll kill to keep this quiet. The recording cut off, leaving silence heavier than the fog. Ezra's knees buckled. His father, the pastor, the sheriff. A conspiracy woven into the heart of Havenport. And Lucas, trying to tear it apart, had paid the price. Jasper's hand found his, steadying him. We need to get to the church, he said. If Lucas hid proof there, we can end this. Ezra nodded, but his mind was on Lucas's voice, the fear in it, the love. He'd always been the screw-up, the one who didn't fit, but Lucas had believed in him. And now, with Jasper's hand in his, Ezra felt something shift, something dangerous, something alive. They reached the church just before dawn, its steeple looming like a judge's gavel. The basement door was unlocked, a careless mistake or a trap. Inside, the air was damp, the walls lined with boxes labeled donations. Ezra pried one open, finding stacks of cash and plastic bags filled with white powder. His stomach churned. This wasn't just smuggling, this was a machine, and Havenport was its engine. Jasper found a ledger, its pages detailing payments to names Ezra recognized. Danvers, Reynolds, even his father. But one name stood out, written in red. The Keeper. No real name, just a title like a ghost haunting the pages. They're coming, Jasper whispered, his eyes on the basement window. Footsteps echoed above, heavy and deliberate. Ezra grabbed the ledger, stuffing it into his jacket, and they bolted for the door. But it slammed shut, the lock clicking. A voice called from the other side, Sheriff Danvers. You boys should have stayed out of this, Danvers said, his tone cold. Open the door, Ezra. Let's talk. Ezra's heart raced. He looked at Jasper, whose face was set, determined. We fight, Jasper said, grabbing a crowbar from a nearby crate. Ezra nodded, his fear giving way to something harder, something forged in years of being called a shame. They barricaded the door with boxes, buying time. Jasper found a loose vent in the wall, just wide enough to crawl through. Go, he said, pushing Ezra toward it. I'll hold them off. No, Ezra said, grabbing Jasper's arm. We're in this together. Jasper's eyes softened, and for a moment, the world stopped. He leaned in, his lips brushing Ezra's. A kiss that tasted of salt and fear and something sweeter. For luck? Jasper whispered, pulling back. Ezra crawled through the vent, Jasper behind him, the ledger clutched to his chest. They emerged in an alley, the church's bells ringing as if mocking them. They ran, the fog their only cover, until they reached the cliff where the lighthouse stood. It was a temporary haven, but Ezra knew they couldn't hide forever. We need to expose them, Ezra said, his voice fierce. The ledger, the recording, we make it public. Jasper nodded, but his eyes were distant. There's something I haven't told you, he said. Lucas and I, we were close. Not like that, but he trusted me because I know what it's like to be an outsider here. I came to Havenport running from my own past. If we do this, my secrets come out too. Ezra's heart ached, but he took Jasper's hand. Then we faced them together. As the sun rose, painting the sky in streaks of fire, Ezra felt the weight of Havenport's secrets and his own. Lucas was still out there, dead or alive, and Ezra would find him. But first, he'd tear down the town that had tried to break him. The cliff's edge was sharp, the ocean below a restless beast. Ezra and Jasper stood in the lighthouse's shadow, the ledger and recorder in Ezra's bag, their weight heavier than stone. Dawn broke over Havenport, but the town felt like a stranger now, its quaint streets hiding a rot that had taken Lucas and threatened to swallow them too. Ezra's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop, or you're next." He showed it to Jasper, whose jaw tightened. "They're scared," Jasper said. "That means we're close." They needed a plan. The local paper wouldn't touch the story. Too many ties to the town's power. But Ezra remembered a journalist, Claren Gwynn, 35, who'd moved to Portland after writing a piece on Havenport's fishing decline. She'd been kind to him once, slipping him her card when his father wasn't looking. Ezra found it in his wallet, creased but legible, and made the call. Clara agreed to meet them at a diner outside town, far from Danvers's reach. As they waited, Ezra's eyes kept drifting to Jasper. The kiss in the church basement lingered, a spark in the dark. He wanted to hate it, to hate how it made him feel alive in a town that wanted him dead. But Jasper's presence was a tether, keeping him from falling apart. Clara arrived, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "You're playing with fire," she said after Ezra explained, her voice low as she scanned the ledger. "This is bigger than Havenport. These names, Reynolds, Danvers, your father, they're linked to a network that stretches up the coast." "Can you publish it?" Ezra asked, his voice raw. "Lucas is out there. This is the only way to find him." Clara nodded. "I'll need time to verify, but I can get this to my editor. Stay low until it's out." They left the diner, Clara promising to call when the story was live. But as they stepped into the parking lot, tires screeched. Danvers's truck blocked their path, and he stepped out, his gun gleaming in the morning light. "Hand it over, Ezra," he said. "The ledger, the recorder. Now." Ezra's heart pounded, but Jasper stepped forward, his crowbar still in hand. "You'll have to go through me." Danvers smirked, but before he could move, another figure emerged from the fog. Tom Caldwell. Ezra's father looked older, his face etched with something like regret. "Give it up, son," he said. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand enough," Ezra spat. "You let Lucas get hurt. You're part of this." Tom's eyes flickered. "I did what I had to. For the family. For the town." Ezra's hands shook, but he stood his ground. "You chose money over us. Over me." Tom opened his mouth, but a shout cut him off. Clara, phone in hand, was recording. "Smile, Sheriff," she said. "This is going live." Danvers lunged, but Jasper swung the crowbar, knocking the gun from his hand. Ezra tackled his father, pinning him to the ground. The fight was short, desperate, and when it ended, Danvers was cuffed to his own truck. Tom slumped against a tree, defeated. Clara's story hit the internet that night, the ledger's pages scanned and uploaded, Lucas's recording playing on loop. Havenport erupted, protests at the church, reporters swarming the sheriff's office. Pastor Reynolds fled, but the feds were closing in. The keeper's identity remained a shadow, but the system was cracking. A week later, a tip led Ezra to an abandoned boat off the coast. Inside, weak but alive, was Lucas. He was gaunt, his wrists scarred from ropes, but his eyes lit up when he saw Ezra. "You did it," he whispered, pulling Ezra into a hug. "I knew you would." Ezra sobbed, the weight of years falling away. Lucas was back, but the town was broken, its secrets exposed. Tom faced charges, his silence no longer enough to shield him. Ezra and Jasper stood on the cliff again, the lighthouse behind them, the ocean stretching to the horizon. "I'm leaving," Jasper said, his voice soft. "This town, it's not for me. Not after this." Ezra's heart twisted. "Where to?" "Anywhere but here," Jasper said, his eyes searching Ezra's. "Come with me." Ezra looked at Havenport, its lights flickering like a dying star. He thought of the years spent hiding, the shame he'd carried, the love he'd buried. Then he looked at Jasper, at the hand extended toward him, and he took it. They left that night, Lucas promising to join them once he recovered. The road stretched ahead, open and uncertain, but for the first time, Ezra felt free. Havenport had tried to break him, but he'd stood taller than its lies. And with Jasper by his side, he knew he could face whatever came next.